Democratic President-elect Joe Biden has spent the last few weeks nominating the members of his cabinet and White House as he begins the tough task of rebuilding America, ravaged by the coronavirus and surging unemployment. He's already named leading members of his foreign policy and economic teams, which many say shows that he's fulfilling his promise to build an administration that reflects the nation's diversity. Well, for more on Biden's cabinet picks, we're now joined via Zoom from New York by Professor of Political Science at Fordham University, Professor Christina Greer. Thanks so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, so Joe Biden said that he would pick a cabinet that looks like America. Has he succeeded?
He's getting there. I mean, he's definitely trying to find people who are diverse, and that term is all-encompassing. Moving from, say, Donald Trump's cabinet, which was incredibly white, incredibly male, incredibly old, and incredibly wealthy, Joe Biden does not want to do that. He's got a wealth of qualified African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, many of whom have never held positions. And so he's trying to do that. It also, though, hinges on one key piece. If Mitch McConnell is still the head of the Senate, and the Republicans maintain control, Joe Biden is likely going to have a very difficult time getting many members of his cabinet in senior level positions confirmed by the Senate. This is why the Senate race in Georgia, where there are 2 Senate seats that are currently up for election, and there's a runoff on January 5th. That's why so many people are paying attention to those 2 Senate races, because the outcome of that race will decide whether or not the Republicans maintain control of the Senate and possibly block not just these appointments, but the agenda of Joe Biden, or if the Democrats are in control of the Senate and actually allow some of these appointments to go through.
All right, let's assume that things go well and he gets the majority of his picks through. What does his team tell America and the international community?
Well, there's a lot of repair that needs to be done. So let me just start internationally. We're going to have a Secretary of State who's going to have to travel around the globe to talk to our once former allies and apologize for the past 4 years and try and rebuild relationships, whether it's climate change treaties that we've left on the table, whether it's arms treaties that we've left off the table, whether it's going to the UN and trying to reinsert ourselves as possible peacemakers. And, you know, in the past 4 years, we've buddied up to dictators and our former adversaries. When I think about places like Russia or Iran or, you know, certain members of the Crown family that have just, you know, been the opposite of what American democracy stands for. So we're going to have to do a lot of international work. Domestically, the folks that Joe Biden chooses are going to have to repair so many of the agencies where the people who were put in by Donald Trump were there explicitly to destroy that agency. So he's going to have to rebuild trust with the members and the bureaucrats in those agencies, but also really think about how we can think really critically about transportation or housing or health or the global pandemic. So many areas that have been neglected, defunded, and quite honestly led by people who were wholly incompetent and did not have the resources intellectually to take on the jobs that they had.
He's not going to please everybody, but I guess he's picked people that he can trust, so there's a lot of experience, and some would say quite a number of Obama staffers. Does that tell us that he wants to finish the work that he started with Barack Obama, or does he have his own message but happens to be using Obama staffers to help him?
Right. I think he has his own message. I think what needs to happen now is that, you know, we have been so far off of the track these past 4 years. I think Joe Biden initially is trying to pull people in who actually know how to govern and who know how governance works, who knows Washington, D.C., but they also know the office of the presidency and the vice presidency. So these are people who have a very short learning curve and they can get in and hit the ground running. And so I think that's why some of these names are people who we saw in the Obama-Biden administration from 2008 to 2016 in lower positions, and now they've been elevated because they actually understand the job and they can pull us back to a sense of normal before we go on to a new track of progress. But if we think about the last 4 years under Donald Trump and his administration, we've had people who were just grossly incompetent, people who actually did not care about American democracy, sadly. And we need people who actually, in the Biden administration, who can think critically about education, who can think about a global pandemic, who can think about healthcare, and put the needs of not just American citizens, but global citizens as their mission and their priority. And that's just something that's been lacking in the past 4 years.
All right. There's a section of the Democratic Party known as the Progressives. How will they view these cabinet picks?
Well, I mean, many of the cabinet picks, they will not be happy because they'll probably feel that I keep saying Biden.
Yeah.
Biden's picks are too middle of the road. But we also have to remember that, the progressives, albeit strong and loud, they are not the majority of the nation. And I think Joe Biden's priority is to choose people who best represent the majority of the nation. I know many progressives, I'm a progressive, don't like to hear that all the time. But when we think about just where we've been, I think Joe Biden is more of a cautious politician. That's why Donald Trump was definitely nervous about facing him in a general election. Even though we teased Joe Biden during the primary, we always knew that he knew that he could lose to someone like Joe Biden because Joe Biden is middle of the road. And that's where most of the country rests. Donald Trump was not concerned about a Bernie Sanders because even though Bernie Sanders has significant support and those supporters are very loyal and dedicated in pushing out his messaging, Donald Trump knew that the vast majority of Americans, Democrats even, would not go for a Bernie Sanders. And so here we are where I think Joe Biden is trying to still satisfy certain progressive messaging, but not do it in a way where he ostracizes Democrats and also Republicans who actually voted for him.
So Donald Trump surprised a little bit in that he got more African-American votes than any other Republican before in history. There are Democrats who say that the Democrat presidential nominees have taken the black vote for granted for many years. Do you think this administration is going to address that with the way it's been set up?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to. I mean, let's be clear. If the Republican Party had not chosen to cast their lot with white nationalists and a racist and anti-immigrant rhetoric, I think that they could have a lot more black supporters. Keep in mind, the vast majority of black ideological diversity is trapped within one party. I mean, 91% of African-American voters vote Democratically. And even though Donald Trump did increase black voters this time, the least likely group to vote for Donald Trump is black women. The second least likely group is black men. Everyone else is way beyond black men and black women in voting for Donald Trump. So even though he increased his percentages ever so slightly, he still does not have a stronghold, and the Republicans still don't have a stronghold on the black electorate, largely because of their white nationalist rhetoric. So if they can figure out a way to undo several decades of this movement, keep in mind, many members of that party still fly a Confederate flag, and that is antithetical to what many black people believe in. That Confederate flag represents the South, Confederacy, that stood on the side of U.S. chattel slavery so many generations ago. And so the Republican Party has a lot of work to do. If they wanted to, they could really aim to get immigrants, more conservative folks, not just from the continent of Africa and the Caribbean, but from all over Latin America and Asia. They choose not to. So that's something that they'll have to figure out as they do their postmortem after Donald Trump. But African Americans, by and large, are still very loyal to the Democratic Party. And I think Joe Biden is showing with many of his cabinet appointments and some of his policy positions that he recognizes the loyalty of black people, black women especially, obviously in his choice of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and will try and push forward an agenda that recognizes and elevates the leadership that black people have shown the Democratic Party for so many decades.
Professor Christina Greer, there's so much more we could talk about, but time's not on our side. But thanks so much indeed for sharing your thoughts and insights with us this evening.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Okay, that was Professor Christina Greer, who's a professor of political science at Fordham University in New York.